The talks of regulating big tech has always been ongoing for many years. Regulation is definitely coming. The question is when and not if. And the best way to visualize this is that big technology company would most likely be regulated in the future similar to how we regulate the telecommunication media company today. And history might teach us a thing or two about what will happen to this big tech of today. Let's look back at the great technological leap of the 1980s. In the late 1980s, telephone was invented. Although there are controversy as to who really invented the first telephone, Graham Bell is the man that shown the world the possibility of a telephone worldwide. And the Bell system was patented in 1876. And by the year 1878, the commercialization of telephone has begun. And this is really a story of many startup, many bankruptcy, merger, and more merger. And by the time the Bell patent expired in 1894, thousands of competitors has rushed into the industry. And by the early 1900s, the era of mega companies started arising. And the first one was American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T, which has really been growing by consolidating its competitor into the company. However, it is not until the year 1910 did the government start some form of major regulation of the industry. And regulation only started to formalize through the Uniform Telecom Rate Regulation in 1925. So it took close to 50 years from the commercialization of telephone to some form of regulational framework for the industry to come into effect. However, that did not stop the growth and the rise of this mega telecommunication giant. Of them, AT&T continued to grow during this period. It is only until 1970s did the government start to break up AT&T under the pretense of antitrust lawsuit. It then also take another decade before AT&T really start to diversify away part of their business. So from the invention of the telephone, it took roughly a century for the industry to mature and reach a point where the government saw the need to control the industry. And this happened again with many of the great media companies that come along. Since then, all the major media companies would have to operate under strong regulation framework. Some really started out with strong regulation straight away, like radio, but others only face regulation after they become a major force in society, like cable TV. But overall, the concept is simple. If it is a media that has the power to reach and influence millions of people at the same time, then it would have to operate under some form of regulation. From the printed media of newspaper to the sound wave of radio to the colorful work of television, all the companies would have to run their business within some regulational framework. Yet, with the rise of the internet, some of these regulations are starting to seem obsolete. For example, instead of waiting for our local newspaper to arrive every day, we can get our news from platforms like Facebook or Google, and we can read them from around the world. And instead of hugging around one television with our family, we now each have a small device in our hand, watching our favorite show on YouTube or Netflix separately. And also, instead of calling and messaging our close one through the service of our telco, we are now connecting to them through applications like WeChat or WhatsApp. Although the rise of these companies and their services have largely been great for consumer, after all, we're not really paying anything for them. But they have been quite bad for competition. And what is even more amazing is that instead of having a few dominant companies controlling our telephone lines right now, we have a handful of companies dominating the entire internet. So much so that to many of us, when we talk about the internet, 95% of the time we're talking about either Google or Facebook. And most of the website and application that we're using today on a day-to-day basis are powered by a few companies, namely Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. Back in 2019, a journalist by the name of Kashmir Hill from Gizmodo ran an experiment where she tried to cut out Amazon, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Apple from her life. And she found that she could hardly function at all. She found that many of the services that we use either online like Netflix or Airbnb, or even offline like our train station and our local restaurant are all powered by Amazon or Microsoft. So these technology companies are now the backbone of the internet. And they are in fact considered the company that really built up the infrastructure of the internet. Yet, unlike most infrastructure providers like our utility, say your power, your water, and your telecommunication, this company has been operating largely in an unregulated space, which is why I think it is highly unlikely that they will continue to stay unregulated as their dominance in society continue to grow. And it might not even be just about consumer protection or antitrust law. Their continuing spread of power and influence might start to threaten the essence of government itself. Because no government will sit around to see their power and influence withered away by these tech companies. So sooner or later, the government around the world would want this company within their control, and doing that through regulation. Will the regulation really be the death of this big tech? So does the emergence of regulation within the internet space really mean the death of all this big tech? Well, maybe not, because looking at history again, we have seen that just because television is being regulated, it did not restrict the growth of, say, Hollywood. And even if AT&T is being broken apart, it continues to grow throughout the 1980s and 1990s. And the growth and dominance of AT&T really slowed down at the turn of the century, not because of new regulation, but mainly coming from the rise of the next new media, the internet. So although there have been continuous talk about the huge influence that these tech companies have in society, and they should really be regulated or even broken apart, I think it is not a prospect investors should really fear. The regulation or antitrust law will not really be the death of these tech companies. But what might kill them could be the next wave of technological change, and when they are unable to change with the time. However, what could really be the next great media for the world? And how would it change society? It is anyone's guess for now, but it could be interesting for us to continue watching this big tech. So there you have it. What are some of the risks you are seeing with these big tech companies? You can share with us below. If you've gotten value from this video, I hope you give us a like and share it with a friend who you might think benefit from it as well. And if you're planning to start your investing journey right now, you can always check out our Premium Club, where we can provide you with comprehensive stock report every single month. You can go to valueinvestasia.com and click on our Premium Club to find out more. Anyway, as always, my name is Stanley. Till we meet again, invest safely.